Good afternoon. This is Critical Talk with Professor Amina Al-Din. Critical Talk is a program, comes on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 4 o'clock on Muslim Network TV, which you can access on YouTube or Facebook. We're also live on Galaxy 19. Today, we're going to talk about issues in higher education. And there are lots of issues, and in specific, talk about diversity issues. We have with us a person who knows about diversity issues kind of across the board. So we will go across the board. With me this evening is Dr. Aisha El-Amin. She's the Associate Provost and Chief of Staff in Urban Education from the University of Illinois at Chicago. The woman does a lot of stuff. Let me try to hit some of them. Her passion has led her to become an Illinois State Board of Education K through ninth grade teacher at another lifetime, and an adjunct professor at several colleges and universities, in addition to a wealth of community service, publications. She was appointed a board member for Routledge's journal, Religion and Education, and a board secretary for the Council on American Islamic Relations in Chicago. She is an executive member of American Muslim Educators. Today, and we'll find out more about what she does, she has a number of awards, a 2016 Inspiring Women's Award, Diversifying Faculty in Illinois Fellowship, and Illinois Veterans Grant, and DePaul / Glenview Clinical Model Scholar. Last night, I had the wonderful opportunity of hearing Dr. El-Amin as she was trying to school some people on leadership and diversity in higher education. I got out my pencil and took notes, so I'm going to cover some of that too. Welcome, Dr. Aisha.
Thank you so much, Dr. Al-Din. I really appreciate it. I love being in the space with a mentor and teacher to have some conversations that are meaningful to the spaces that we both have engaged in over the years. So glad to be here.
Well, I have so many questions. I'm going to try to limit myself because my producer tells me I can go all over the board, but I love going all over everything.
Let's do this. We can go all over the board together. You can get on.
I know and just heard, because my daughter, who's a professor at Western Illinois University, is there's a shooting on campus. So her anxiety is through the roof.
Oh my God.
One of the things that you mentioned was you talked last night about a number of things, the diversity pipeline.
Mm-hmm. You
talked about wait a minute, how to reduce stress. I want to go to the how to reduce stress. All of us, those like me who have been in education, fortunately or unfortunately, for 30 years at a university, the stress level is extremely high. And those of you who are a little bit newer know what I'm talking about when I say the stress level is high, is very high.
That's
and
right.
It's always what someone can do to make us comfortable, which is like asking the rape victim, well, how do you feel?
Yes.
It's never switched around to you figure out how to make me comfortable, learn something, make me comfortable without me becoming the scapegoat for my own feelings.
That's right.
So talk to us.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm over here, and amen, because it's real, right? It was real pre-pandemic and pre-endemic, right? And it's even more real now, right? Yeah. So, and when you talk about Black and brown folks, specifically, especially in these spaces, there's a leaning on that is happening, right?
Yes.
Leaning on, and we're accustomed to it, right? Because oftentimes, unfortunately, we're one of few, or maybe the only one. And so when you get Black students that come in, or brown students that come in, and they're looking for someone who can connect with them and they can talk to and feel comfortable with, they lean on us, and we, it's a blessing to be in that space. And so we take our time and our energy and invest it in ways that we know can help students, especially students that look like us, because we know the struggle of that pipeline. But what's real is that leaning on us is a hard weight, right? And it wears on you at times, and over time it certainly wears on you. And so there's some self-care that needs to happen, but and there's some leaning out of our upstanders and our allies in this time that they should be stepping up, right? But unfortunately, we can't make other folks step up, but we can try to preserve what we have so that we can be the best that we can as we move forward the next day. I think what many institutions are grappling with right now in all aspects is mental health, right? Mental health of students, mental health of staff and faculty. Because I mean, look, I'm in my house right now, and I used to say I'm working from home, but really I'm living at work. That's what's actually happening, right? And so I think part of what I'm learning is that I have to set some boundaries, right? I have to set some limitations. Yeah, you may want to email me at 10 o'clock at night because you figure, you're not anywhere anyway. But you're not going to get an answer from me then, right? And so how do I balance? I need to still be there and do my job, but I have e-learning children. I have, and that's a whole other conversation that we could talk about, right? I have all these stressors that are compounded by me being in this space. And so I think us setting boundaries, but also our institutions need to do some things in order to alleviate some of the stressors that are the normal things. So we were actually talking about this in a leadership meeting. How can we eliminate some things that just don't make sense right now? Like, right? How do we actually take what we have, and we've always been doing it, and make it make sense in this time? And so that's what we have to think. What are the things that your faculty are doing that maybe this committee and this task force, maybe they don't need to meet right now, right? Maybe that's on hold because there's so many other things that's going on. So how can we try to balance that scale of everything that's compounded on top of what we have to do? I mean, some of our faculty have never taught on Zoom before, have never been on Zoom, and now you're supposed to teach all of your classes and do all of your exams and try to figure out, all this kind of the group work and how you navigate that field. So I think there has to be some intentional at the higher levels of how can we alleviate some of that stuff, but as and personal level, how can I set boundaries in order to preserve myself and my sanity and let the stress levels not go to the highest points. Right. So it's an ongoing conversation, but it's a real problem.
I fortunately retired before all the Zoom teaching on Zoom happened. So I am feeling good and wondering, my teaching experience, even when I was a visiting professor at this place or the other, was such that Black faculty have a weight. If you're Black, you really don't know what you're talking about. And thus, we can kind of listen or not listen. You're only valued in a sense on a committee even, because that means somebody can check off this box for we have a diverse administration, or we have diversity present on our committee. But whatever you say is ignored, or it gets and then they go on to the next topic. And after a while, because your psyche can't handle it, you begin to zone out during faculty committee meetings or committees that you've been appointed to, because nobody's listening to you anyway. You checked off the box.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And you know, that checking off of the box happens so much. We see it because we have diversity quotas, right? When you look at institutions, part of their accreditation process, those accreditors are checking for diversity initiatives. They're checking for those things in order to make sure that you can remain accredited. So there's a checking off of boxes that happens as part of the institution's systemic process. But the problem is there's a checking off of boxes and nothing else, right? So, we hired a Black faculty. Right? No, it doesn't matter if they're not being supported. It doesn't matter if they have too much service. It doesn't matter if there's no promotion and there's no other people that look like them and there's policies that go against it and there's microaggressions. And so none of these things matter because now I have that checkbox checked. And that's problematic. And then we see we see the results of that. We see that, there are not enough Black and brown folks in these spaces. We see that people are not being able to be retained. We see that they're not being promoted, right? And so I think when your heart is not in it and you're trying to check a box, we got problems.
Well, interestingly, and before we take the break, because Islamic studies was not my first career, I don't do well with microaggressions. Then I became the angry Black woman. I used to have a sign, I had it made, that says I'm having a white attack, gotta go. Because I would actually leave faculty meetings. Oh yeah, look, girl, I was terrible. And especially after I get tenure. They said, I gotta go, I can't take it anymore, because you get tired of being ignored. So I want to come back because I know you've thought about this and giving faculties ways to become better. So let us take a quick break. And while you clear your head of our friendly conversation, we're thinking on the same line, so I can go anywhere. And we'll talk about that.
Sounds good.
We'll be right back.
Billboards are popping up all over the country with an...
Our neighbors don't realize that Muslims are absolutely opposed to ISIS.
Salam. My name is Abdul Malik Mujahid. I'm an imam in Chicago.
16 shots! No me! No justice! No me!
So how do we bring up the energy which can really have an impact on the world? You need to build bridges of understanding among people, and we need to have America moving forward.
That lesson learned have brought the strength of humanity to America, which is the diversity.
Mujahid Talks, only on Muslim Network TV. Faithfully connected.
We are back, and I'm going to ask Nita to hold her question for a moment so I can get Dr. Aisha's guidance on how, if the persons of color are absent, what could you give those all-white faculties as a checklist for themselves?
Yeah, now that's a good one. And so there's plenty of reading materials, right? How to be an anti-racist, how to, there's Peggy's What's in Your Knapsack. I think that's what it's called. I have to look it up. It's kind of a check on, first of all, checking your own privilege, right? And understanding your own privilege, so that you can walk into the space, the educational space of learning, a little bit more humble, right? And a little bit more insight. But if you're in an all-white space, and there's, as many of you know, the changing demographic of the United States is not all white. And so that means that there's something, first of all, check your hiring policies and practices.
Okay.
Because there's something that's gone astray. right? Because there are people of color in every field. There are experts in every field. And if you look around and you don't see them, then something that you're doing systemically is preventing them from being in that space, right? And if you've had them and you've not been able to retain them, then you need to also look at how are you creating community for them? What is their experience there? So do you have an exit interview so that you can learn if you are, basically bleeding people of color, right? They come in and they're running for the door after they're there. There's something that's systemically wrong with your space, right? And so if you truly want to build community, first you get information. You have to do some data gathering and see exactly what it is. And so if you don't have an exit interview in place, again, these are things that you can Google. You also can hire someone to help to really get a full view of your space. And what we call is a equity scorecard, right? And so basically looking at all of your policies and your practices and really trying to understand what's going on, you would get a score on each of these things, and then a really good summary of what exactly is happening, right? And then you can begin to change it. But if you don't even know what is happening, then you're really at a loss. So there's a data gathering, and there's some humility and heart and courage that comes with that, right? You have to be willing to understand and really willing to invest in authentic change. And without that, it's impossible to move forward, because we can do anything we want with data, right? Yeah. So you have to determine even before you begin to collect data that you have true intentions of creating an environment that is both welcoming and uplifting for people of color. And it's not,
a lot of people, I kind of think, and I'm not going to give my faculty the benefit of the doubt. They don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. But what I will say is, one, folks will claim, oh, I'm not doing anything wrong. And then there is that underlying thing of, if you're asking me to investigate my own privilege, you're threatening.
Yes.
And I'm saying, oh, wonderful. You feel like I feel all the time. But it doesn't get to what I want to get to, because women always have a much harder problem and either get shut down for the remainder of their tenure, or their space of being there, or they become very, very vocal. And it becomes, oh, here she comes again.
Yeah. No, it's true. I'll tell you about one experience too that I had, which was, and this was not very long ago. And being, I'm in a space where generally I know folks, right? But I was in a meeting where people that I had never been in a meeting with before.
Okay.
And I was giving my input and insights just like everyone else. And the person facilitating the meeting kept cutting me off. No one else, whenever I would talk, would cut me off. And I was like,
isn't it great?
So first I was like, oh, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just, And then I spoke again and they cut me off third time. And he cut me off. And then he said, you know what? I want to hear from Sally. I want to hear from Joe. Went around the room, skipped over me, and then said, and that's all that I want to hear from.
No.
Oh, yeah. So I was like, okay, it's not just me. There's actually something going on here, right? Yeah. But even in that space, so when I get mad and frustrated and upset, I yell, I curse, and I cry, right? And so I felt all those things coming up. And so instead of allowing that to come up in a professional space, I completely shut down.
You gotta get it off you.
Yes. No, I completely shut down because I was like, I can't do this right now because he can't be every so-and-so in the book, right, in this space. Right. And so I went into my office and I did. I was like crying and mad and cussing. And so, but then I composed myself and I wrote an email and I copied my chief diversity officer and I copied everybody who I thought should be copied. And I said, this is what happened. I think it's disrespectful. I'm not sure what bias you have against me, but it is unacceptable. Mm-hmm. He apologized. He says, I realized that I did it now that I'm reading it. And I will work on doing better.
Yeah.
So I say that not to in any way say that, you know, there's a best way of handling any situation, right? We handle the situation that we're in based on, you know, ourselves and our experience. But sometimes you have to take a step back, collect yourself, and think through what's the best step forward. And this was my example of that's what I had to do. I literally, if I would have said anything, I probably would not be here, right?
I know exactly what you mean. And I'm going to take a moment to take a break. And Nita Pearson, since we're talking especially about women, I want to take a sidetrack and talk about women running for office. Let us take a break.
Assalamualaikum.
I love Adam's World because it makes me learn in a fun way. That Adam has a green face and orange hair. I like this song. I like how Adam sings. I like Adam's World because it makes me happy. What? No. And here's Adam and here's Anissa. Adam is and his sister. Adam is a boy and he is very smart.
Download the new Adam's World app at adamsworldapp.com and let's help tomorrow's Muslims today.
Okay, let me preface this question a little bit. And this is probably, I don't know if things are still politically correct or not, but let me be unpolitically correct or unreligiously correct or unsomething correct and say that Muslim women have a hard road to travel irrespective of their vocation, not appreciated as experts or professionals in many fields. Let me add to that there are race issues. Muslim women, immigrant descended or immigrant recently who have recently become citizens running for public office don't speak to African American Muslim women until they need to drag one on stage for something or the other, or to have a table of one or two in a space. So that I'm answering Nita, brings up why at least many of the African American Muslim women I know don't break any run to support them for anything because the support is not reciprocal. When African American Muslim women run for something, you have a whole different scenario. They are supported by both African American non-Muslim women and African American Muslim women. So you have two different scenarios going. So whether it's the professional spaces and all that they are, or public office spaces. And Dr. Aisha, I know has experienced this because it's Hey Aisha. She's walking beside somebody of another ethnic group and it's Dr. So-and-so. So it's that tension between women, and it's a tension always between Muslim men. I always, and sometimes with Muslim men, and it's become a thing. Dr. Amina doesn't like for you to call her sister. No, because I'm not your sister. And I worked hard for this piece of paper, just like so-and-so worked hard for his pieces of paper. So I'm just painting a picture here. I'm talking with one of my children, and it is an important thing. Women work hard to get to be professionals, and they're expected in every place except the Muslim space. We're tired of being drug out when you need a brown face, whether it's in the professional space or it's in the Muslim space. And now that I have done my little prologue and put Aisha on the spot.
Oh, I love you.
Comments, I know.
No, you are hitting the nail on the head. I think let's keep it 100, right? Let's keep it real.
Yeah.
Black lives really have not mattered in the Muslim community until it's been sexy to everybody else right now, right? Like, and I'm not sure.
Wait a minute. Uh-huh.
You know, yeah. Wait, I think they matter too. You know, I mean, so and I am not, you know, I'm not jaded, but I do know that we have a lot of dynamic Black Muslim women, right, that are doing phenomenal things that, yeah, folks don't really care about, right? They don't really want to. They don't want to elevate them. They don't want to speak their name until they need something, and so that it's highly problematic, and it's in the larger context of the Muslim community. I mean, let's be real. We have a very segregated community. And I mean, like I hear about other folks that are running for office or school boards. I not only ran for a school board, I won it and I served a term, and nobody ever said a thing, right? Mm-hmm. So these are we just are used to just keeping it moving, right? We're because that's just what we've had to do, and without the supports that other people have in place, and it's the unfortunate truth, but it's the truth.
It is, and I'm looking at Nita, who wants to continue this conversation, and I'm going to ask her to hold that question for a minute, and because I want to know about the work you're doing with Sound Vision regarding education. Okay, so, and this has been, I want to say, a little over 2 years, maybe 3 years. So what I did initially is started a weekend school here in Chicago, right? And really, you know, I started it for very selfish reasons. Right now I have 3 teenage daughters. Back then they were little people, right? And I wanted an Islamic weekend school because we didn't have a full-time school. And so, and they needed some of that Islamic education, but I was not willing to go to Bridgeview or all the other spaces where they wouldn't see themselves, right? And where they may be called out of their names, or where people may think that they're going to hell just because they aren't Arab. So I started with that impetus, right? And so what we did is we found that there was a lot of curriculum that did not depict the variety of the diversity in our ummah. So we started creating our own curriculum, and we started, really making the road as we walk it. Essentially. And so what I do now with Sound Vision is I go around and I do workshops for educators across the nation, actually internationally as well. We go to Canada, and we talk about the curriculum. We talk about discipline. We talk about how you make a lesson plan. Because what I know is that it is, we have some of the most beautiful people teaching Islamic weekend schools, right? But they don't necessarily have an educator's background, right? And that can be very frustrating when you're trying to discipline somebody and teach them their harus, right? And you like, just shut up and listen and just repeat after me, I said, right? And so we talk about these things, and how do you actually create engaging lessons, and how do you deal with discipline? How do you engage parents? Things that, of course, I have a graduate degree in education and teaching and learning. And so really trying to ensure that our Islamic weekend schools, our teachers have the tools that they need so that they can do their job. And so it's really interesting because we do surveys and we find no matter where the weekend school, the same problems persist. That of discipline,
that of engaging curriculum, that of making sure that parents are engaged. And so it's been very rewarding work throughout the years.
So how do you combat, I mean, I know that there are in and around Chicago and in the suburbs several weekend schools, but they're taught from the perspective of the madhab that the school follows. And so if you're African American and all you learn about are some Arabs, then that's not helpful.
No.
Or if you go to another one and all you learn about are some South Asian scholars and literature, that's not helpful either.
That's
so
right.
how can we get schools to realize they have to teach a little bit about everything so that our children come out well-rounded?
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting, because my study, I did a study of 12 families that made decisions on how to educate their children. These were Black Muslims from Chicago, right? And what I found is that all of these families switched educational spaces in order to try to find just that. Try to find a space where their children can be valued for all of their identities and well-rounded, right? So they went to immigrant-ran Arab majority schools and found that their children's Blackness was diminished or not valued, right? And so they all
bullied.
Yes, and bullied. I mean, this is the reality. But then they went to charter schools, right? Where we have charter schools that have a specific focus on your African descent. But then they found that they really didn't value Muslims, right? And so that part of their identity was at a disadvantage. And then the African-American Muslim school didn't have the resources, so the education was lacking, right? And so there's all of these gaps. It's like, hey, please, I just want a good education. Like that's the goal, right? And so why they had to navigate a space of educational, desert for their children, right? This is highly problematic. And so there's an examination of all of our curriculum, because not just Black folks need to know that they're Black Muslims, like not just Black folks need to know that brown folks had, and natives built this country. Like everybody needs to know that history, because that is our common history. And so there's a misconception that, it's Black History Month and Black people want their Black History Month.
Right.
This is a benefit for you more than it is for me, right? Yeah. Because then we begin to really not just check the boxes we talked about earlier, but we begin to truly and authentically respect each other and the histories that we bring to the space.
Well done. I know it's hard, but it's hard on one side, but it's so easy to do on another.
Absolutely.
And Muslims in this country have an opportunity to do something other religious schools don't do. We have an opportunity to fully educate our children about other religions, about cultures, and to do it in such a way that they grow into respecting one another. And because one of the things I noticed on CARE's website is a young man hung himself because he couldn't take the bullying in school. And bullying, we give it cursory attention, but we're not really giving it the full attention that it deserves, especially for children who we sent out there, remind me of the Civil Rights Movement. You sent a couple of Black kids out there to integrate a white school, and all their parents out there throwing stuff and calling them names, And we send our Muslim kids to, whether they're charter schools or regular public schools, in the kind of the same way. It's like, okay, you go fend for yourself. Me, the parent, is going to stay home, and let you be out there by yourself. But we don't have an investment. And it seems to me that we could have an investment. I was listening a couple of months ago to Sheikh Mendez, who said, okay, stop. The only companion of the Prophet Muhammad was not just Bilal. There were loads of African companions of the Prophet, and people didn't carry that through. No, we'll let them have one.
Check box.
To learn the names of the others, or the fact that some of them wrote and this and that. And that. But that is really a deprivation to African American Muslim kids who have to see themselves in this religious tradition.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we've got to get them in there. Years ago, we used to have all of these weekend schools, where teachers were giving extra time to come in and teach. Now they have kind of disappeared in the African American Muslim community. As we subject our kids to other ethnic groups' stories about themselves.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do, Dr. Aisha?
Look, so I got plenty of answers. I mean, I have plenty. Ideally, I mean, the reality is we need to take the system that we currently have and flip it on its back, and rethink it. We had a Muslim, African American Muslim fair where we had them do poster boards just like a science fair. Our students were absolutely like thrown back at everyone that was African American and Muslim and all the things that they had accomplished. Right. This has to be embedded into our curricular understandings. We have to see our full selves. And that just should not happen at just African American schools. That should not happen at only African American.
It should happen everywhere.
Absolutely.
I mean, many of the Muslim kids going to Arab weekend schools or Arab day schools don't know that they're Chinese Muslims. They don't know that they're X number of countries, 51, 52 on the continent of Africa. They don't know that they're Indonesian. They only learn about their ethnic group.
Yes.
Whatever it is. So, I mean, there's got to be a way of curriculum integration, but also accountability and responsibility in that, so that there's some council somewhere that holds these schools, just like we wish to have that checklist for higher education is accountable and responsible, so that they get rated.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And one thing that I know, I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. We need to have that. And it should be that if you don't have that certification, that accreditation, I talked about the checklist of the accreditation and diversity. And if you don't have this, if the council has not said that your curriculum speaks to the true history in its fullness,
right?
And your policies and your practices and and your trainings, all of that doesn't speak to a welcoming environment for a diverse community, then you got an F, right? And maybe it affects your bottom line, because unfortunately we are in a country that if we're not talking dollars, then it don't make sense, right? And so these things, if they affect your bottom line, then it becomes the imperative that we need. Although it should be a moral imperative, it becomes an economic one. And right now, we have to speak economic imperatives, because the moral imperatives have been there and they have not been responded to.
That's true. It makes me want to say one of those councils you sit in should take that on as a responsibility for Muslim schools. Or if there's not a council that does that, then perhaps we need to create one.
Yeah.
And a model curriculum for folk to look at and to follow, because God forbid that we wind up with children who don't see themselves as having a place in Islam. There's no history, there's no reference, there's no anything, but also that they don't know about the other Muslim cultures
That's right.
Because
That's right.
you can't distinguish after a while between what is actually Islam and what is culture.
That's right. That's right.
Because you call culture if it is Islam. That's special.
And I know you've done some work, I know, on kind of, textual work with textbook companies to make sure that they're not misrepresenting our faith, right?
We got
and it happens quite often. So if you're gonna misrepresent, how about you just shut up, right? So we have to be in those spaces where, yes, we can create our own, but we have to be a part of a larger conversation, because those public school students need the correct information too, right? So how do we begin to take this council idea and extend it to make sure that we place ourselves in positions to make a difference beyond our secular Islamic parochial walls, right?
You're right. Well, on this coming Tuesday, and you may wish to tune in, the man that spearheaded that project that we did on public school, I think it's social science. No, it's not. It was world history textbooks will be on the program, because we worked hard. We even produced a volume on Muslim history, but we got the Texas Depository. I don't know why they're called depository, but don't worry about that. Anyway, the Texas Depository to change what it wrote on Islam and Muslims. Well, 30 years later, snapback, they took out all that work we did.
That's right.
And we found out, because I, as a parent, didn't know that I think there are 2, or there may be 3 book depositories which control what is in text.
Right? Yeah, see, that's a scary thought.
It is. And what's in text about various cultures and their histories. And the one that was there for, that discussed Islam and Muslims was a throwback maybe to the 1940s. But my youngest daughter, who's now a professor, it was in her textbook.
Oh, I believe it. Well, I did work with CRGC. It must have been 5-6 years ago, where we were able to do a brochure and to give to all Chicago public school teachers. The CEO of schools made sure that it got in all of their hands. And it was a supplement to the curriculum. It gave them brochures. It gave them spaces to go for field trips to really learn about the Deen in a way that was authentic. It talked about the holidays and stuff. So even if, there's so many ways to navigate this thing, and we need to navigate it from all ends and all corners. And so that was just another way that we can ensure that even if you just have a inkling of, I want to make sure that I'm doing the best that I can. Here's information in your hand. You don't even have to search. We've done the research for you. We have the books for you. We have the resources. All you got to do is pick it up. So.
Well, it might be that we need to do that again.
Yeah.
I'm more than willing to help you, although I don't know anything about it. I want to come back. We had our last break, and I want to come back and I want to talk about the importance of mentorship. So we're going to take a quick break and come back and talk about mentorship.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe, and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
Okay, let me give a little prelude. Oftentimes when we think of mentorship, we think of our students. And as you said earlier, students don't have a clue as to how it becomes a nice burden, but a burden nevertheless, when you're the only one and trying to mentor everybody. On the other hand, those who pass along through, matriculate through the pipeline, don't understand the pipeline. How you start off, some may start off as assistant professors. They've gotten tenure track jobs. If they're sitting in all white faculties, they probably won't get enough information to have their portfolios together when it's time for tenure, or when in spaces in between when they need to review it. When they get tenure, if they get tenure, what happens next? Or back if you get tenure but you don't get promoted. All of those little things are not in a book anywhere for people to understand that pipeline, and there's mentorship needed there too.
Yes, absolutely. And you, look, you are the expert on this. So, I mean, you know what it takes to climb the higher ed ladder, right? You understand all of the work and all of the sweat and all of the navigating that has to happen. And so, you know, and now it's you give back so much, right? You give back to folks like me and so many others because you understand that journey. And so the having a mentor is really, really essential, right? I mean, you need someone to help you navigate these waters, right? This is not easy because the systems that we're trying to navigate weren't actually built or designed for us to navigate them.
Hey,
so I mean,
we'll get rid of you after year 2.
Yes, exactly. Because our box was checked, right? We're good. Right? So if you don't have someone that has already cleared the path, right, and knows, oh no, you got to turn here. Don't do it this way. Do it this way. You find yourself swimming against the current with all of your force and all of your might, but not getting anywhere, right? And so if you find yourself in that space where you are truly working overtime and you still are hitting the wall, it is not because you are less than. It is not because you are not good enough. It is because the system was not designed for you to do anything but exactly what you're doing. Exactly. And so a mentor can grab your hand and say, come on, it's this way. They got you going this way, but this is what you got to do. You got to jump over this log, turn over here, crack your back, you know, like all the things that you have to do. And so unfortunately, oftentimes we get in these spaces and we don't have the kind of mentorship and friendship. And we think, you know, because if you at this level, you know, like were you even navigating a faculty position, you are thebomb.com, right? And so you've been used to accomplishing things. And so when you're running into these walls, there is a sense of mental, you know, exhaustion. Like, am I doing, and, you know, and self-doubt? Am I doing something wrong? Am I not good enough? Am I really imposter syndrome? And I'm really not supposed to be here? Do I not really, you know? So all of these things are happening, but a mentor can help talk you through that because, again, they've already been where you are, right? And they've navigated it successfully. So we need to, you know, lean on each other a bit. And I think, unfortunately, oftentimes, you know, we're used to carrying the load, right? And this is not one of those spaces where you need to be carrying the load.
It is. I was remembering a young woman who was speaking in the program last night, and a lot of us, especially Muslim women, you get the PhD, then there's no job. You keep going for jobs, and you got to figure out, why is nobody hiring me? You know, and it's a knock at your self-esteem. You know, knock after knock. And for some African American women in general, they just don't get hired.
That's right.
and they wind up adjuncting all over the place.
Yes.
Right? With outrageous loads, course loads, which I wouldn't even think about, but outrageous
pay and no health insurance and no, yes.
Right. And then after a minute, there's no chance to get a tenure track job because they've not published anything. But you can't teach 5 courses.
There you go. That's the system that's set up exactly. When you're teaching that much, you don't have time to do the writing. And when you're not writing, you can't get the publications. If you're not published, you can't get the job, right? And so it is you're in a hamster wheel. You're doing all the work, but you're just not going anywhere.
Administrators like you are on the hamster wheel too.
Yes.
You have more meetings than anything I can think of. I mean, it's like I'm going into a meeting, up, I'm going into a meeting, up, I'm going into a meeting, and then it's preparing for the meeting.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And then it's, refreshing oneself. I'm trying to take your diplomacy. Refreshing oneself after the meeting, right?
Yes.
And getting ready to do it all over again.
That's
and
right.
so what they do in this Black Women's conference that was not so long ago, these administrators 10 years ago, 2 Black women administrators, now they can't get published. They've been in administration without publishing because meeting after meeting, it was coming up to speed on this, and all they are technically is a check box.
Yes. And our conversation is, in your mentorship is helping me to try to carve out that time, right? Because I administrative work is a full-time, right? You can't get these writing, and again, you're in this hamster wheel. You're just moving. And so you're like, okay, let's write that down. Let's get this book out. Let's go. So we do this, right? So that's a perfect example.
I'm going to end conversation number 1. I'm going to ask you to come back again because I want to talk about e-learning. I don't have any short people at home, but it's everywhere. And I'm hearing all the angst and, oh my God, I don't remember algebra, all of those good things. So if you would permit us, we'd like to have you back.
Sounds good.
To talk again. And I can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
This has been great. Now we're going to have coffee and we will talk again shortly. This is Professor Amanal Dean with Critical Talk. We've just had a wonderful conversation with Dr. Aisha Al-Amin, who is an associate provost over there at University of Illinois in Chicago. Thank you again.
Thank you.